Thank you very much. All right, I have a lot of content to go through, so I'm going to get through it kind of quickly so that way we do have an opportunity for questions. So starting off with, for Southern Nevada, and it's important to understand that not all of Nevada, actually only a very small portion of Nevada as a geographic piece of land actually uses water from the Colorado River. It's only really just Southern Nevada. The rest has water sources elsewhere that do not come from the Colorado River. But for those of us in Southern Nevada, and I'm talking about the 2.3 million residents and over 42 million visitors every single year, we rely on the Colorado River for 90% of our water source. The other 10% comes from our groundwater. We don't have a lot of groundwater. We're not as fortunate as some of the other states. As you look at the users of the Colorado River, when it was divvied up, Nevada never in a million years thought it would have the population that it does. So as they divvied up based on population and agricultural use, Nevada ended up with 1.8% of the river. We have the smallest allocation of the entire Colorado River basin. Although we may be small, we are mighty, and I'm going to get through how we do that. So looking back over the last 30 years, our river has been in a decline. It's not anything that's new. In fact, climate change experts have been predicting this for a very long time. But if you look at that dashed blue line, that's the 30-year average of flow going into the river, of what we expect when we're able to take our shares out of it. You can see over the last 22 years, only 5 years have we had flows that are over that 30-year average. So essentially, we're operating in a deficit. We have less water being given to us through Mother Nature's methods, but yet everyone still has their allocation that they're allowed to take out. And that's where we're finding ourselves in a crisis right now. You may hear the headlines saying, what do we have to do to prevent the river system from crashing? This is what we're talking about. So if you look at, and I know you started off with a picture on your slide, Ron, showing Lake Mead. If you look through history, even just in the last 22, 23 years, since 1999, when we were at almost 100% full, in fact, just a few years prior to that, we actually had to spill water over the spillways, which was a historic event. But since then, the drought has definitely persisted. We are now today actually sitting at about 28% full of Lake Mead. Now, Lake Mead, by design, is actually probably about 6 times larger than it actually needs to be. And the reservoirs are meant to fill up on wet years and draw down on dry years. Lake Mead has been our source for Southern Nevada for since the beginning here when they created the dam. But now we are in such a point of having continuous drawdown because we're not getting replenishment that we're sitting at less than 1/3 full of Lake Mead. And that gets dangerous because if you look at it sort of on its, if you were to look at it on its side, it's almost shaped like a martini glass. The first couple sips out of your martini, your drink's still full. And then all of a sudden, somewhere down halfway through, the next sip, you find yourself down in the olives because you drain faster. The volume gets a little bit less as you get down. And that's kind of the situation we're in. We see the elevations of Lake Mead change faster right now. So obviously the hydrologic conditions in the Southwest are pretty dire. In fact, there is really no relief in sight for the Colorado River Basin. Our water comes from essentially the west side of the Colorado Rockies. And although we have great snowpack right now, and we did even last year, for example, the challenges with climate change, if we heat up too fast in the environment, if they have a really short spring and it just kind of starts going into summer months, you have parched ground that sucks up a lot of that water as the snow melts off, as well as evaporation and transpiration that happens. So a lot of the snow melt is not making it into the river. And that's really where we're faced with such a crisis as we have climate change impacting us. So when we look at Lake Mead specifically, one of the things that we do every single year, we receive the hydrology predictions from the Bureau of Reclamation. our crew, our hydrologists work in tandem with them. We do our own modeling as well as what the Bureau gives us. And essentially what the problem is we have about 16 million acre feet of water allocated between 7 states and the country of Mexico. And we have been lucky to receive anywhere from 11 to 12.5 million acre feet of inflow. So obviously we don't have enough water coming in to support the water that's going out. And this graph right here that shows you, it's looking at the predictions as we are expecting things to happen. And this happens because of the way the Bureau has to manage water between the different dams. Now, upstream of us is Lake Powell, and of course, they have to control what they want to protect up there, which is power pool at that dam. And by doing that, that holds back some of the flow that's coming into Lake Mead, where we're trying to protect what's called dead pool. And so if they're protecting Lake Powell to protect power pool, then Lake Mead receives less water. If we see 11 million acre feet inflow projection, this red line, as you see, kind of drops down, and you can see that dashed line. I'm going to talk about that in a second, where you see the red line kind of go flat line, then pop back up, and then flat line, then pop back up. It bounces around dead pool. And dead pool in Lake Mead is elevation 895. That means at dead pool, water will no longer pass through Hoover Dam to go downstream to Arizona, California, or Mexico. Hoover Dam will essentially be the end of the Colorado River if we hit dead pool. So this is important for the entire lower basin because obviously Arizona, California, and Mexico are relying on water making it through the dam. So we're in our second shortage declaration. Obviously, this is a record event. The federal government has declared a shortage on the Colorado River. And under the first shortage, each of the states were negotiated into how much water they would stop taking, a cut of their allotment. And we were declared in the second stage of that shortage just this past year. So that means for 2023, we have to take even less of our allotment. So again, the river is not getting enough water, and each of us users have to take even less water in the middle of a drought and with climate change impending upper temperatures for everybody. So just to show you, as I mentioned, Nevada has the smallest allotment. So our legal entitlement on the law of the river is 300,000 acre feet per year. That's how we measure water in the world of water management. It's an acre of land, 1 foot deep of water per unit. So we are legally allowed 300,000 acre feet of water out of the Colorado River. Now, with the first shortage, we had to take an additional amount lost. So now we're sitting at the shortage, which is what you see kind of the third row down. Right now, we're only allowed to take 275,000 acre feet of water out of the river. This kind of shortage cutting happened to Nevada as well as Arizona. California didn't have to take their cuts yet because that was a negotiated agreement between California and Arizona for the Central Arizona project. I'm not going to get into that, but a lot of people speculated why California didn't take cuts. It's because Arizona agreed to take their cuts should they ever be told they have to take cuts. So now we're at that point. Everyone is taking their cuts of water. So what do we do here at Southern Nevada? Our major directive, our goals here are to manage the infrastructure necessary to deliver water to all of Southern Nevada. We plan the resources necessary, and not just the water that we have here, but the groundwater. We look at other areas that we can generate more resources. We also do water banking. We have water banked in our ground as well as in California's ground and Arizona's ground. And that was a negotiated agreement between the states that says if ever we have to get to it, there's a certain amount of that water that we say, hey, Arizona, I want you to take your water out of the ground. We're going to take some of your share out of Colorado River. It was a savings account because the law of the river generally says if you don't use your allotment, you lose it. Well, Southern Nevada has done a really good job with conservation, so we shouldn't be forced to lose it. So we all negotiated what we call intentionally created surplus. And so each of the states, if they can save water to the system, then they get to bank that for future use. And then, of course, conservation is our cornerstone of our organization. If you go to our website, you're just going to get hit with conservation messaging all over the place, because that is absolutely what we do. So I mentioned on that one graph, the red dashed line that was important. When we saw that elevation of Lake Mead bouncing around Dead Pool, it was very important, because what happens? The water doesn't make it through the dam to serve California, Arizona, and Mexico. But Southern Nevada saw climate change early on. In fact, back in the very beginning of the 2000s, when we said, wait a minute, we're hearing from climate change experts that this is going to get worse, never better. So we started planning for the future. Now, this graph on the left shows 3 different intakes. The first one has that funny little gooseneck. That is intake number 1 that the Bureau of Reclamation built for us back in the 60s so that we could draw our share of water from the Colorado River and send it into Nevada. Looking back real quickly on this slide, this picture right here, that's intake number 1 sticking out of the lake. So it's no longer functional at all. Intake number 2, SNWA did build back in the 90s, because we thought we need to go deeper into the lake. We don't know forever that we're going to be able to use intake number 1. So we built intake number 2 back in the 90s. But when we saw the turn of this century and the amount of drought that we were predicting, plus the climate change experts, we really modeled the hydrology of the river and said, this is not going to be favorable for anybody in the Colorado River Basin, especially the lower basin states. So our community trusted our expertise, and this community put forth its own money, not a single dollar of grant money or anything else. We put forth our own money to build a 3rd intake, which became the longest tunnel of its type in the United States at that time, if not the world. We built the 3rd intake on purpose below Dead Pool. So that means when the lake hits Dead Pool, Southern Nevada still has secure access to water always. This is going to secure us for a very, very, very long time. And this is important because it plays into our economic development. So I mentioned, we talk about Southern Nevada Water Authority also partners with other states to do what we can. I mentioned the groundwater banking. Well, one of the things we did do is Southern California is doing a recycling project where they will take their wastewater that's generated from the wastewater treatment plant and treat it to be recycled water and be able to send it back into their system for reuse. And by doing that, it lessens the amount of water they need to take from the Colorado River. We piped up with a paycheck and said, I will contribute to this project. We'll help fund some of this in exchange for you leaving us a share of water. So we negotiated an opportunity to receive 25,000 acre feet per year additional from California's resources, since they won't need to take it from the Colorado River. And that will give Southern Nevada just a little bit of bump in our already small amount that we're allowed to take. Now, I want to make sure this is something that I kind of want to talk about. There are a number of things, and this slide's really not as important, but a number of things have happened since June, when there was a presentation in front of the Senate talking about the crisis on the Colorado River. The Bureau of Reclamation basically gave the basin states a timeline that said, you all need to figure out what you're going to cut, so that way we could find a way to cut the amount of water necessary, which they're estimating 2 to 4 million acre feet of water that is not to be used, in order to save the system from crashing. So Southern Nevada Water Authority has met with these states. We did MOUs to talk about different conservation measurements that everybody is going to start doing, so that every single basin state can find a way to reduce the amount of water that they are using on the Colorado River. This is all really important, but part of what never got considered was the amount of water that is lost throughout the Colorado River, just simply through evaporation and transpiration. This is important because it's almost 1.5 million acre feet of water that is lost, and that is nobody's use. but it was never accounted for in the original banking, if you will, or the original accounting of everybody's use. So these are the things that we're very actively working with the federal government and the other basin states to make sure is accounted for. So here's something that is truly unique about Southern Nevada. Where we are situated, our source of water, Colorado River, actually sits at a lower elevation than where it is used. The Las Vegas Valley is a much higher elevation. So we quite literally pull the water out of the lake, we treat it, and we pump it through a series of pumps, and we lift it all the way up into the valley so that it's used. But what also happens is all of the water that is used indoors is sent through the community's wastewater collection system. All of the wastewater treatment plants are built downstream, getting closer towards the far end of the valley where it's at the low elevation. So gravity brings all the sewer back to the sewer treatment plants. Those sewer treatment plants treat our wastewater to near drinking water standards using some of the most advanced cleaning mechanisms. We return that water to the Las Vegas Wash, which is a really big wetlands river that runs through Las Vegas's far east side, and it ends up back in Lake Mead. So when you look at all of Southern Nevada, if you are using water indoors and you're connected to the wastewater collection system, your water is being recycled every single day. And this is so important to Southern Nevada because we've been regionally recycling our water for decades. This is something that a lot of states, as I mentioned, Southern California is doing this recycling project because they recognize how important it is to no longer discharge their wastewater to the ocean. Let's reuse it. That's truly the future of water. So for us in Southern Nevada, everything used indoors in the wastewater system is 100%, well, about 99% recycled. It's where we lose water is outdoors. Anything that leaves the wastewater system. So that's critical for us. Our conservation efforts for Southern Nevada have been so successful over the years. As I mentioned, in the last 20 years, our population has grown, was 49%. It's over 800,000 new residents in Southern Nevada. At that same time, we reduced our overall per person water use by 48%. And our actual consumption of water from the Colorado River went down 26%. So we can show that it is very possible to continue to economically develop, to build homes, to grow as a community, and still use less water. It is successful, and we've proven it can happen. So how do we do that? We have to manage the consumptive use. That means the water that never gets returned to the river. And those areas are irrigation, evaporative cooling, water feature evaporation, export products, this gets into the business, and septic systems. So the first thing we did, we went after non-functional grass. And I mean the grass that really serves no purpose. It is strictly ornamental. The grass that is in the median of a roundabout that the landscaper has to risk their life crossing a bunch of cars with their mower just simply to mow the lawn. It's something you would never let your toddler run around on or your dog off leash on. It is pointless. So we went to our legislative session and we said, can we make that, watering that kind of grass, illegal from Southern Nevada only? We're not talking about the rest of the state. And regardless of your political affiliation, this went through like a hot knife through butter, all the way through to law. So now, in January of 2027, it is illegal to water non-functional grass. And we have a lot of non-functional grass here because it was easy to install and cheap for a very long time. It's just a huge waste of water. And after our state passed that law, 5 states asked us for the same exact language because they said, this is a no-brainer. You don't pick your dentist based on which one has a little patch of grass in front of the office, and you don't choose which gas station to fill up your tank with because which one has grass. It doesn't affect the business. So this is an easy one for us, and we are encouraging the other states in the basin to do the same thing. We also prohibited new grass in Southern Nevada. The only areas that are allowed to get new grass are parks, schools, and cemeteries. No grass on homes, no grass on commercial, no grass on resorts or anything along those lines. It's just not necessary. We plan for a lot of park space, And there are a lot of great opportunities for people to go collect and walk their dogs and do whatever they want. Just don't use grass. Evaporative cooling is the second largest user of water outside of actual grass. It is something that we didn't realize so much until the COVID shutdown, because the hotels, especially, they all have huge cooling towers, all of these big major distribution buildings, places that were shut down that didn't allow business to happen, but they still needed to keep their facilities cool. Their water use was up like crazy, even though they had nobody really in, no guests, no tourists. So we said, wait a minute. And we started looking into it a little bit more. And we realized evaporative cooling, especially when they're a single pass system, that water is lost to the environment. And when we found out more about it, we realized it's because water is cheaper than power. However, in our environment, you can make power, you can't make water. So we're trying to work with all of these major users, and we're not talking about the little swamp cooler in somebody's window at their house. That's not the problem. We're talking about the big industrial units. We're working with them now to convert, where we'll incentivize them, as well as we worked with the building officials and we put a moratorium on any new evaporative cooling systems, swamp cooler type things for industrial use, or cooling towers for large buildings. They can use air cooled or anything else as long as the water is captured. We just can't let it evaporate to the atmosphere. Water feature evaporation is huge. In Las Vegas, as much as you would not want to believe this, there are a lot of mega mansions and they love their mega pools. And it's not even just a pool that you can swim in. A lot of times they're just water features. They're like concrete lily pads that you can walk across through this little strip of water. And it is a huge amount of water that gets evaporated, as well as man-made lakes. A lot of fancy subdivisions wanted to try and do things like that with all these water features. It is so pretty and luscious in the desert, but it is unnecessary because it wastes a lot of water. So we put a ban on any of these man-made lakes or water features. And now single-family residential homes, the maximum square footage that they can build for a pool or spa or anything else water is 600 square feet. And that covers more than 80% of the pools that are in Southern Nevada. Again, the only ones this really hurts are the mega mansions and the mega millionaires. Export products and industrial. So this is interesting. We never were in the business of business. We never got into how things are made or anything along those lines. But because of, as I mentioned, that third intake and the low lake level pumping station that works with that, and because of our conservation measures, our water is so secure. Even though we're in the middle of this crazy drought, we have the most secure access to the Colorado River of anybody in the basin. So because of that, the S&P and New York Stock Exchange, everybody want to give us huge, great ratings. We have a 50-year solid resource plan where we can demonstrate how we are able to continue to have water and grow and be strong for the next 50 years. Because of that, businesses want to come to Nevada, including bottling companies. And that's a big problem for us because they're going to use our product and ship it out for not returning in our system. And so we have finally inserted ourselves into the economic development world to say, we need to look at these businesses and see what is the value of the water they're using. Are they creating a lot of high-paying jobs for Southern Nevada? Might be a better investment on our water. If they're not, something like a data center who uses the water only to cool the building, the only employees they have pretty much are the armed guards at the front door, and that's it. A bottling company is very robotic. It doesn't employ a lot of people. Whereas if you did a car manufacturing facility, they might use a lot of water, but they also might provide 6,000 jobs. So we are having those conversations now and deciding which businesses may come to Southern Nevada. Septic systems are interesting because as Las Vegas is different from a lot of other towns, it's probably more similar to somewhere along like Phoenix and things, but we spread out, not up. So we had a lot of land and just kept going and going and going. Well, the idea of a septic system is that it's supposed to be temporary. You get a septic tank when the sewer doesn't exist anywhere near you, and then you're supposed to abandon that septic system when the sewer is outside your door and you connect. The problem is nobody ever did that last part, the follow-up on when sewer's outside your door. So right now in Southern Nevada, we have over 14,500 parcels that have septic systems, and more than half of them have sewer right outside the door. Every single drop of our water that's delivered to a home or a business on a septic system never gets return flow credit. That water never goes back to the river. So it is 100% consumptive use. So we are working with the health district and the sewer agencies and getting grant money and anything we can to try and start converting these properties over to the sewer system. So for Southern Nevada, we say this, that, obviously nobody questions earthquake codes in California or hurricane codes in Florida or Mississippi or anything like that. In Nevada, Southern Nevada, our natural disaster is water scarcity. So all of our development codes, these things that I'm talking about here, are so difficult for developers because it means more cost, more planning, a lot of inconvenience to them. It's not just as easy to throw down turf now. They got to actually plan for desert landscape. All of that is an inconvenience to every single one of these industries, but it's because water scarcity is our natural disaster and we have to find a way around it. These development decisions that our elected officials are making are for the benefit of development in the future. As I mentioned, our allotment that we're allowed to take out of the Colorado River right now in 2023 is 275,000 acre feet of water. If we can't drive our consumptive use down, then that means we get to a point where we say we can no longer develop, stop issuing new home permits. But if we can keep our consumptive use down, everybody wins, because not just the developer wins. When there are development happening, whether it's homes or businesses or industries, the entire community benefits because actually, I should say the entire state benefits, because about 70% of Nevada's economic output is generated in Southern Nevada. And it's not just tourism that does that. A lot of development is a huge part of our economic output. So we want to continue to thrive and welcome people moving here. And we have to do so by making these tough decisions with these development codes. So our commitments as an agency are to work with the development community to only use dry-cooled systems for their expansions and evaporative cooling systems on new projects. We grandfathered in the ones that were there. However, we do incentivize them if they want to convert. We had one bottling company that recognized that they're a bottling company with a bunch of evaporative cooling. So they immediately came to us and said, I'm obviously not going to get rid of my bottling company, but I'm willing to change my cooling system. And we handed them a check to help pay for that. And so we will incentivize companies if they want to put in more optimized systems. We want to work with SNWA to convert and upgrade water-intensive cooling systems. We do audit, monitor, and optimize on-site consumptive uses. We're getting sub-meters built in. A lot of technology is going into these systems to truly know how much water is being used so that way we know what their goal is to try and capture that. And then anytime a development has any access to shallow groundwater permits, if they already have it, we encourage them to use that. One of the biggest examples is Bellagio fountains. A lot of people come here and they think they're wasting our water. They actually have their own groundwater rights that they own, and they use their groundwater for the fountains. So they're not using our water. Our water is used inside the hotel for the restaurants and the rooms, and all of that is being captured through the wastewater system. So it's important. So this is what I mean when I say these measures that we do actually have tangible effects. This is just 3 years. This is actually 2020, 2021, and 2022. Remember I said this year our legal allowed take from the Colorado River is 275,000 acre feet. In 2022, we used 224,000 acre feet. That's what the amount of water we took out but didn't return. We delivered a lot more water than that. We actually used a lot more water. It's just that everything else gets returned by our wastewater system. So 224,000 was our consumptive use. We've dropped that down over 30,000 acre feet just from 2020 to 2022, while adding 47,000 new homes and businesses to Southern Nevada. This is to demonstrate how powerful the conservation efforts actually do pay off. And we show this to our elected officials to say, if you want to continue to develop here, we have to drive down our use and we will grow and grow well. It's possible. So all of our incentives that we offer, we do pay up to 50% of product costs for replacing existing wet-cooled systems and going to a dry-cooled system. We have incentives available for replacing cooling towers, closed-loop hybrids. We're working with industries all over the place to find solutions for existing places, as well as how might a new build look to build. And our funds are available for upgrades to control systems, drift eliminators, anything that we can reduce that consumptive water use of existing evaporative cooling. We've always paid for grass conversion, and we're still doing that even if it's considered non-functional grass up until the law goes into effect. After that, it's a state law and you can't water it. But everybody who wants to convert it to desert landscape, we're definitely helping them out with that. And that's the end of my slide. I will take any questions or anything like that.